If you're okay with it, shall we stay at a hotel together? After missing the last train due to overtime, I was stranded. I found a woman looking disheveled in the hotel district. Unable to leave her stumbling around, I invited her to stay at the hotel I had booked. She kept her head down the whole time. When she took a bath, I was surprised by how cute she actually was. What could have caused her to be in such a state? Upon asking, she disheveled she had been in a difficult environment. The next day, Mr. Stevens, a key client, unexpectedly showed up at my house. I want to make a $12 million deal with you in charge. What? My name is John. I'm a regular office worker turning 30 this year. As a salesman, I've traveled to various companies, securing numerous contracts. I'm not the best, but for a 30-year-old, I've done reasonably well. Wow, as expected from you, John. Thanks for your hard work today. By the way, I heard there's a restaurant with a great view. Want to go there together? I'd love to go with you, John. Can you teach me the secrets of negotiation next time? Thanks to this, and I say this with some embarrassment, I was quite popular with the female employees in the office. I was well liked not only by my subordinates and peers but also by my female superiors. For me, having women approach me like that was a great feeling. It boosted my confidence, making me feel recognized as a man. It also reassured me that I was on the right path as an office worker, keeping me motivated. However, that was all a year ago. Now, no one wants to talk to me. And for good reason. Exactly a year ago today, I made a mistake. This mistake marked the beginning of my downward spiral. One day a year ago, I had gone shopping at a department store at a colleague's request. Even though I had secured contracts and achieved results, I was still an employee with less than 10 years in the company. Naturally, performing menial tasks for my boss was part of the job. But that day's task was not for my boss, it was to buy a gift box on behalf of my colleague, Tom. If you ask why I was doing a menial task for a colleague, it wouldn't make sense logically. When things get busy, we help each other out. It's a habit from my school days of cooperating with friends and classmates. It's been a habit since then. So, I bought the gift box for Tom and delivered it to his boss, Kevin. But Kevin said, "This isn't the right one." No way, I made a mistake. I was sure I had bought the exact gift box Tom had instructed me to get. In this company, there are about 5 specific types of gift boxes we use to apologize to clients. It was one of those. Even though the instructions were verbal, there was no way I got it wrong. However, what came out of Kevin's mouth was a completely different name. Mistakes happen, but why did you buy the one thing our client hates? Did you do this on purpose? It turned out that the gift box Tom instructed me to buy was the one thing the client disliked. Kevin, being a suspicious person, thought I did it intentionally. It was the worst-case scenario. It was just a single gift box. An errand I ran for a colleague, not even for myself. I never imagined it would cause such backlash. I apologized to Kevin, explaining there was no ill intent. And so, by going to buy the exact box of sweets that Kevin had mentioned, the matter was resolved once again. Later, when I asked Tom again, he mentioned the same gift box name Kevin had. But didn't you say something different before, Tom? No, I said the one with the traditional Japanese sweets. Get it together. I got yelled at by Kevin because of you. Seriously, help me out here. Despite him assigning the task to me, Tom complained about the inconvenience it caused him. In the end, I owed him another favor for the trouble caused. Looking back, it was ridiculous. Next, Tom asked me to do some clerical work that involved reviewing the documents and reflecting them in the graphs. Apparently, it's something important that Tom's team will use in an upcoming business meeting. I worked on it during my free time, based on his instructions. When I handed it to Kevin, he said, "All these numbers are slightly off." I quickly went back to my desk to check the documents Tom had given me. But the data had been swapped with slightly different figures. After the second mistake, Kevin, already suspicious, became even more distrustful of me. Despite my sincere apology, he didn't forgive me as easily as before and gave me a lengthy reprimand. I left with heavy steps. In hindsight, I should have taken measures to prevent a repeat of the mistake. But I never imagined a colleague would go to such lengths to set me up. Once again, I ended up owing Tom another favor. This cycle of favors continued, and every time Tom offloaded a task onto me, I failed to complete it properly. My repeated failures spread throughout the company like ripples. The ripples reached Kevin and eventually my direct boss, Lisa. Eventually, I lost the trust of those around me. We can't entrust important work to someone who makes such simple mistakes repeatedly. My hard-earned reputation crumbled. Until today, I'd been relegated to menial tasks instead of sales duties. Even menial tasks are important and need to be done by someone. But the volume of these tasks increased, leading to constant overtime. Today, I'm working late again. I haven't been home in a week. But even if I go home, it's just to eat convenience store food and sleep. I haven't been cleaning or taking out the trash. My room must be a mess by now. These thoughts felt like distant memories. I said I haven't been home in a week, but even before that, I'd only been back a few times. Missing the last train due to overtime, I often stayed at capsule hotels, internet cafes, and business hotels. Before I knew it, this had become my daily routine. How long will this life continue? What am I even doing? I muttered to myself as I walked home, missing the last train again. That night, I was wandering around the hotel district looking for a place to stay. I prefer not to stay at the same hotel 2 nights in a row. I don't want the hotel staff to form a negative impression of me. However, if there's no other available hotel besides the one from the previous night, I reluctantly head back there. They must be thinking, there he is again. The thought of being judged made me feel even more depressed. Of course, missing the last train and being unable to go home due to overtime was already quite disheartening. While wandering around, I saw a woman walking towards me, looking out of place for the hotel district. She was dressed in tattered clothes, carrying a shabby travel bag, with her face hidden. She looked more like a runaway than a homeless person. She clearly had nowhere to go. Her weak and unsteady steps made it seem like she might collapse at any moment. But everyone around her pretended not to see. Even if they noticed her, they just gave her cold looks without saying anything. Seeing her, I felt a pang of sadness. I couldn't help but relate to her, being met with cold stares after repeatedly making mistakes at work. Before I knew it, I found myself calling out to her. "Excuse me, are you okay? You seem like you have nowhere to go." She didn't respond, keeping her head down. I turned around and pointed in the direction she was heading. "There's a women's hotel just around the corner. Would you like me to show you the way?" She still didn't reply. But she didn't turn away or leave when I stopped to listen and made my suggestion. It seemed like she would follow me if I walked. Feeling this, I headed to the women's capsule hotel I had recommended to her. When we arrived, I handed her a few bills from my wallet. "This might be unnecessary, but please use it if you need. I don't spend much money since I'm always working, so don't hesitate." She still hid her face but didn't refuse the money. Since she took the money, I thought she would be okay. Thinking that, I turned around to go back the way I came, intending to walk away from her. Then, suddenly, she grabbed my arm. She was clutching the crumpled bills I had given her. "I'm underage. Can I stay here alone?" A woman spoke while looking down. I was surprised and confused by her speaking for the first time, by having my arm grabbed. And I also was surprised and confused by the fact that she was underage. I stood there for a moment, frozen, trying to process everything. I realized it would be hard for a minor to stay in a hotel alone. But I couldn't just abandon her. After some thought, I made a suggestion. "There's a net cafe I usually stay at. Minors probably can't stay alone in most places, so if you're okay with it, shall we go there together?" She nodded while still holding my arm. Despite my invitation, I felt uneasy about her lack of caution. Nevertheless, I decided to take her to the net cafe. Feeling awkward about how smoothly things were going, we walked to the net cafe. I rented a larger room since we would be staying together. A man in a suit and a girl dressed like a homeless person. The odd combination made the clerk raise an eyebrow, so I felt the need to explain. "Just to clarify, there's nothing shady going on here, so you don't need to worry." Even though I didn't stay here every night, the clerk seemed to recognize me. Upon hearing this, the clerk smiled warmly. I wasn't sure what that smile meant, but at least we were able to use the room, so I felt relieved as we headed there. It was my first time using a room for two. Unlike the usual small rooms, this one was spacious and even had a projector, and it was a lockable room. There's a laundromat along the hallway you passed earlier. You can use that for laundry. There's also a shower you can use. As I waited for her, exhaustion hit me hard, and I let out a big sigh as soon as I sat on the sofa. But after just a few minutes, I realized something. Wait, does this mean we're going to sleep together? Also, if she's underage, won't I get in trouble for taking her here? This thought triggered a cascade of work-related anxieties in my mind. Before I knew it, I had fallen asleep. When I woke up, a beautiful stranger with wet hair was peering at my face. Who are you? My words seemed to shock her, and she looked dejected. That's so mean. I woke you up because I was worried you'd catch a cold sleeping on the sofa. I'm sorry. Are you the girl from before? Yes, who else would it be? You were looking down the whole time earlier, so I couldn't really see your face. I was surprised by how cute you are. What? Oh, I also bought some dinner. You must be hungry. Want to eat together? She nodded again. Maybe because she had taken a shower, she seemed more lively than before. We sat around the small table and eagerly devoured the convenience store food together. By the way, what's your name? Jessica. She answered with her mouth full of food. Watching her, I found her as cute as a small animal, like a squirrel. Take your time. I handed her a bottle of tea. She took it and gulped it down, along with the food in her mouth. After a breath, she introduced herself again. Jessica. 18 years old. Wow. You really are 18. I am almost double your age. You just believe me because I said so. I could be lying, you know. There's no reason for you to lie to a stranger like me. And no one would lie about being a minor if they weren't. True. So, what's your name? Oh, I haven't introduced myself yet. I'm John. I'll be 30 this year. 30 isn't old at all. Coming from an 18-year-old, it sounds sarcastic. We finished our meal and chatted casually. As we talked, her smiles became more frequent, as if our initial meeting had been a lie. Seeing her relax, I felt my daily stress melting away. I decided to ask the question that had been on my mind. Hey, I hope you don't mind me asking, but why were you wandering around the hotel district in that state? Her smile vanished instantly. I knew she had her reasons. But seeing her reaction, my heart tightened. I apologized and tried to switch to a lighter topic. I can't expect you to share such a heavy story with someone you just met. I'm sorry. Surprisingly, my apology seemed to prompt her to start talking. No, actually, it's more rude not to say anything after you've been so kind to me. You don't have to push yourself. But sometimes it helps to talk to someone. You're so kind, John. Doing all this for a stranger like me. It's just a coincidence. I wouldn't do this for just anyone. Haha, you're making me feel special. We've only known each other for a few hours, I couldn't feel that way. I'm just a gentleman. When I saw you walking, I felt a connection and couldn't just walk away. I see. But enough about me. Tell me your story, Jessica. When I saw you, I thought you might be a runaway. Well, I guess you could say that. I might be a runaway. She gave a slightly troubled smile. But it was different from the smile she had earlier. This one was pained. I was born and raised in a typical family. It was just me, my mom, and my dad. They were always happy together, and I loved them both very much. Even so, you ran away? She nodded. Jessica explained that when she entered middle school, her once happy family fell apart because of a tragic event. Her mother died in a car accident. After that, she and her father spent their days consumed by grief, taking time off from school and work. Even after the funeral, the sadness lingered, but Jessica tried to move forward by going back to school. Her friends and teachers supported her, helping her cope with the loss. But her father reacted differently. He turned to alcohol and gambling to drown his sorrow. He had always been somewhat isolated at work. He worked for his family, but losing his beloved wife might have made him feel like his family had fallen apart. He might have lost his reason to work. He changed completely, drowning himself in alcohol and gambling, losing his job in the process. He was burning through our savings rapidly. If my father wouldn't work, then I would. Out of consideration for my father, who was struggling after losing his wife, I decided to support him until he could get back on his feet. Thinking this way, Jessica started a part-time job to support the family while still attending school. But she soon realized that part-time work after school wasn't enough to cover their living expenses. So, she started working day and night, whenever she wasn't in school. Unaware of her efforts, her father continued to waste their savings until they were completely depleted. After that, it would have been great if he had come to his senses and started working again for the sake of the family and Jessica. But things didn't go so smoothly. After my father spent all his savings, he started relying on my earnings next. Until then, she hadn't told him about her part-time jobs. Every time she came home late from her part-time job, her father would question her. She made up stories about hanging out with friends, but it seemed her father had caught on. Despite her efforts to resist, her father ended up spending all the money she earned on alcohol and gambling. To make more money, I thought I should cut down on school hours. She started by being late or leaving early, but eventually dropped out due to financial pressures. She took on more jobs. But her father wasn't satisfied and began to physically abuse her. Unsurprisingly, she found it increasingly difficult to go home. She confided in a female senior at one of her part-time jobs, who invited her to stay at her place. At first, she was staying out of goodwill, but that didn't last long. Soon, a female senior started charging her an exorbitant amount of money as rent, and gradually, that senior began to treat her as a nuisance. That's terrible. It's no better than living at home. Yes, but looking back, it was better than being abused. Jessica tried to seek help from her boss, Mike, at the part-time job, but it was too late. Before she could talk to him, her senior had already fed him lies about Jessica. The rumors were terrible, accusing Jessica of staying at various men's houses and seducing them, stealing money, and begging. She had no idea about these rumors. Of course, Mike had no way of knowing the truth. When she went to talk to him, he fired her, citing her alleged behavior as the reason. She only learned about the horrible rumors when a colleague told her as she was leaving the job. She realized she couldn't stay at her senior's house any longer. With no place to go, she found herself wandering aimlessly. You couldn't go back to your abusive father's house either, right? No. I didn't want to go back. After living like a homeless person for a few days, I found her, leading to our current situation. Listening to her story, I couldn't help but remember the unfair treatment I'd faced from my colleagues over the past year. Being wronged by colleagues, finding yourself labeled as the villain with no one to help you. She had been betrayed by a trusted senior at her job and lost her place to live. Our situations felt oddly similar. That must have been really tough. Yes. Actually, I've also been deceived by colleagues for the past year and treated as the bad guy at work. Really? Yes, because of that, even though I'm in sales, I've been doing nothing but menial tasks every day. I see. But compared to what you've been through, my situation is nothing. Still, if someone like me can manage to keep going, you can too. I smiled at her. She looked at me and smiled back. Thank you for encouraging me. Well, I hope it helps. No, it really does. No one's ever helped me this much or encouraged me before. Hearing that makes me feel better. I wondered if my attempt to encourage her had actually helped. Anyway, it's late. Let's get some rest. I told her, covering myself with a blanket and falling asleep. The next morning, I was lucky enough to have a day off. I couldn't just leave Jessica with nowhere to go, so I invited her to my place. Not knowing how she would react, I nervously made the suggestion. Contrary to my worries, Jessica seemed to trust me completely and happily accepted. We took the first train to my home. As I inserted the key into my apartment door, I remembered how messy my place was. Just a heads up, my place might be a bit messy. Don't worry. It's fine. Pushed by her encouragement, I opened the door, revealing a scene worse than I'd remembered. The hallway leading to the living room was lined with overstuffed trash bags. Even from the entrance, the living room looked like a disaster zone with garbage strewn everywhere. Wow! She must have found it more overwhelming than she imagined. She was at a loss for words. Jessica, are you ready for this? I swallowed hard, turning to her nervously. She met my eyes, slapped her cheeks a few times to brace herself, and replied, Yes. This is nothing compared to what I've faced. She was surprisingly resilient. But as she stepped into the living room, she was struck speechless again by the sheer chaos. I, too, was stunned by the extent of the mess, unable to find a clear spot to step. Are you okay? I asked again. She seemed to need more motivation, so she slapped her cheeks a few more times. Yes, I'm fine. Her cheeks were now quite puffy. The mess was so severe that some areas had trash piled up to our knees, making it hard to walk. This is something else. Navigating through the knee-high trash was difficult, so Jessica helped me move forward. Her unintentional physical contact made my heart race a bit. Despite the situation, I couldn't help but feel that way. It must be a guy thing. Well, let's start cleaning. I'm really sorry you have to help clean right after I invited you. No, I'm happy to help and repay your kindness from last night. With that, she began cleaning efficiently. Her efficiency was such that it wouldn't be an exaggeration to call her a professional cleaner. She moved with such speed and precision. Even though I should have been leading the effort, it felt more like I was assisting her. In fact, I couldn't keep up with Jessica's pace, and it felt like I might be thrown out like trash. Eventually, the living room floor began to emerge. What I thought would take a whole day of cleaning was finished by evening thanks to her efficient and thorough work. She didn't just throw out the trash, she also cleaned all the water areas in the house, and the kitchen, which had been buried under dirty dishes, was spotless. To my surprise, a delicious smell was coming from the kitchen. Jessica had started cooking after finishing the cleaning. Having a clean house and homemade food after so long felt incredible. Not only did you help clean, but you're also cooking. I don't know how to thank you. Like I said, I'm repaying you for last night. And I'm happy to be invited to your home. What a polite and kind person she was. I couldn't believe she had been living like a homeless person just a few days ago. Dinner's ready. It's simple, but please enjoy. I tasted her cooking. It's delicious. You're a great cook, Jessica. You'll make a wonderful wife someday. Really? I hope so. She looked a bit uncertain as she watched me eat. That caught my attention, but I was too focused on her delicious cooking. Is it really that good? She seemed anxious, watching me devour the food. Yes, absolutely. Come on, join me. She looked surprised. Are you sure? Of course. Food tastes better when you eat it together. She seemed taken aback at first, but then smiled and sat across from me to eat. I savored the rare pleasure of sharing a meal with someone. As we chatted and enjoyed our dinner, the doorbell suddenly rang. It was already prime time. This was the time I would usually be busy with overtime at the office. Having the lights on at this hour was unusual. I thought it might be the landlord checking in. But the intercom screen showed a stranger, an elderly man with white hair. Yes, who is it? My name is Stevens. Stevens? The name sounded familiar. And the man on the monitor also seemed familiar. Mr. Stevens? Yes, the man who suddenly appeared at my house was Mr. Stevens, the CEO of a major company that is a significant client of my workplace. But why was he here? If he needed to see me, it would make more sense for him to visit the office and ask for me directly. Moreover, I wasn't in charge of his company. I couldn't comprehend the situation at all. I'll open the door now. With a brain muddled with confusion, I realized I couldn't leave Mr. Stevens waiting outside. I headed to the door and grabbed the doorknob. My heart pounding, I nervously opened the door to find Mr. Stevens standing there, exuding an air of authority. How can I help you? Wait, is that you? Just as I spoke, Jessica's voice, mixed with surprise and excitement, called out to Mr. Stevens from behind me. Oh. So you were here. I was worried about you, Jessica. Mr. Stevens addressed her as Jessica? As I tried to process their seemingly familiar relationship, Jessica approached the door. Wait, you two know each other? Yes, his company is one of our clients, and we've met before. Really? What a coincidence. No, the bigger surprise is your relationship with Mr. Stevens. I was utterly confused. Well, Mr. Stevens is a regular at the place where I used to work part-time. He always opened a bottle of wine whenever I was there. He's a kind older gentleman. Gentleman? Her casual term for Mr. Stevens made me bite my tongue. Jessica, you shouldn't call Mr. Stevens that, he is a CEO. Ha? I didn't know Mr. Stevens was a CEO. I preferred to keep that low-key. Oh, I see. Despite saying that, she didn't seem particularly surprised. Thank you for always taking care of him. Wait, Jessica? Ha ha ha, Jessica always amuses me. Just being around her brings happiness. Mr. Stevens didn't have his usual tense demeanor. The way he looked at Jessica was kind, almost like a father looking at his child. It became clear that their relationship was more than just that of a regular and a customer. Right? Don't you agree? Yes, Jessica really does create a warm atmosphere just by being there. Exactly. Mr. Stevens, why don't you come inside? It's not comfortable standing and talking here. You're right. I'll come in. It's a bit small, but please, come in. I was deeply relieved that we had cleaned the apartment the day before. The three of us sat down in the living room. After serving tea, I asked Mr. Stevens about his purpose for visiting. Mr. Stevens explained that he had been searching for Jessica out of concern. Jessica recounted to him the same story she had told me about her recent experiences. And that's how I got fired from my part-time job a few days ago. Mr. Stevens listened, a vein throbbing on his forehead. Such behavior is unforgivable. To first approach kindly and then treat you as a nuisance is despicable. But maybe I was at fault too. I probably did something that made my senior uncomfortable, taking advantage of her kindness. No, even if that were the case, responding with harassment and spreading false rumors is inexcusable. Don't you agree, John? Absolutely. If someone has an issue, they should speak up. Spreading lies and ruining someone's reputation is cowardly. And despite all the hardships you've faced, you've endured even more recently, Jessica. From the way Mr. Stevens spoke, it was clear he knew about her life. But how did you know I was here? Finding your location is simple if I ask the right people. His extensive network was impressive. Still, I was shocked that he tracked her down and came all the way here. Noticing my reaction, Mr. Stevens gave me a piercing look. You seem like you have something to say. No, I'm just impressed. But coming here means something significant must have happened. Mr. Stevens sighed deeply. Indeed. Yesterday, I visited your usual part-time job spot, and a man was there, shouting your name repeatedly. A man? Yes, I asked the staff, and apparently, he claimed to be your father. What? Jessica's expression shifted from happiness to confusion and fear. When I looked again, he was on his knees in front of Mike, begging desperately, "My daughter is missing. Do you know where she is?" It was surprising, given what you had told me about him being abusive. From Jessica's stories, I had a terrible impression of her father. His sudden appearance at her workplace was concerning. I couldn't ignore it. When I spoke to him, he broke down, saying, "I don't need money anymore, I realize I was wrong. I'll go to jail if I have to. I just need to know my daughter is safe." Hearing that, she must have pictured the scene in her mind. She quietly shed tears. "When I heard you were fired, I intended to offer you a job at my company. But first, Jessica, do you want to see your father?" She responded immediately, as if waiting for that question. "I'll see him. I need to talk to him." Despite her resolve, she appeared anxious. "It'll be okay, it will work out," I reassured her. She looked surprised but then smiled slightly and nodded. "John, you really are kind. Come on, anyone would do this." Mr. Stevens observed our interaction with admiration. "You both are good people. Did you say something?" "No, nothing. Jessica, let's go see your father." Despite her past with him, she seemed genuinely happy about the prospect. No matter how bad a parent might be, there's still a parent. Jessica's happiness at returning to her father was clear. Mr. Stevens thanked me and left with Jessica. John. Yes? What is it? She shook her head slightly and then smiled brightly. See you again. With that, she left. And now I'm alone again. Sitting in the now clean room, I felt a silence envelop me. The room, a small one-room apartment, felt much larger now that Jessica was gone. I never realized how lonely it was being alone all the time. Maybe that's why I stayed in hotels where I could be around people. Perhaps the clutter in my apartment was a subconscious attempt to fill the empty space. I laughed at the thought, finding it a convenient excuse. The next day, my desk was once again piled high with paperwork, and I returned to my routine of overtime and menial tasks. However, that day I was summoned to the CEO's office. Feeling anxious, I walked in to find Mr. Stevens there. He had come to see me about Jessica. I immediately asked the question that had been on my mind. How is she? Did things go well with her father? Calm down. Everything is fine. She reconciled with her father and is doing well. Thank goodness. Relief washed over me, and I let out a sigh. Thank you, Mr. Stevens. It's all thanks to you. I bowed my head in gratitude. Mr. Stevens chuckled, finding something amusing in my actions. You really are a good person, John. To be so happy for someone you spend only one night with. Well, I've decided, Mr. Thompson. I want to make a $12 million deal with him. Wait, what? You didn't hear me? I said I want to make a $12 million deal with you. But why me? I reviewed your performance records. You had excellent results up until a year ago. Since then, your record has been almost zero. You haven't been doing any significant work, have you? No, I haven't. Regardless of the reasons, from what I saw yesterday, I believe you are a good person. Your poor performance isn't due to malicious intent. Thank you for saying that. So, John, he continued. Yes? Will you take on this project? For someone who hadn't done proper work for a year to be offered such a significant contract was unprecedented. Honestly, I was happy to be appreciated like that. But at the same time, I knew it was more than I deserved. I looked at Mr. Stevens, seeking confirmation. Will you take it? He asked again, his gaze firm and unwavering. All right. If you trust me with it, I'll do it. With that, I found myself entrusted with a $12 million project. Of course, our president, Mr. Thompson, also agreed, saying, if Mr. Stevens says so, and promised to provide full support. My work life changed dramatically after that. No more endless overtime filled with menial tasks. I focused on my actual job and started leaving work on time. Colleagues who had once doubted my abilities were now surprised by my skills. I also met regularly with Mr. Stevens due to the project. During our third meeting, we discussed both work and Jessica. The project was progressing smoothly. And I received updates about her as well. She was now working as a new employee at Mr. Stevens' company and seemed happy. Oh, by the way, here's Jessica's contact information. She asked me to give it to you. I realized I hadn't asked for her contact information before. That evening, I nervously dialed the number Mr. Stevens had given me. Hello, this is Jessica. The voice on the other end felt nostalgic. Just hearing her cheerful voice was enough to satisfy me. Though our conversation started off a bit awkwardly, we soon found ourselves catching up on each other's lives. Jessica had reconciled with her father and was living happily. She sounded genuinely content with her father back in her life. One thing she told me was particularly shocking. Her father had gone to her old workplace to clear up the misunderstandings with Mike. She was seducing men? No way. He shouted angrily, confronting Mike, exposing the senior's wrongdoing, and got an apology from Mike. Even though her father had once been consumed by alcohol and gambling, he had the strength to build a good family before. The pressure must have been considerable. Imagining the scene, I felt a shiver run down my spine. Of course, I also shared my recent experiences with her. I told her about the $12 million deal I was entrusted with by Mr. Stevens and how it was progressing well. We can't let our guard down yet, but we can almost call it a success. While I was focused on my work, Tom, who used to shove all the menial tasks onto me, was now overwhelmed with work himself, making mistake after mistake. He was quickly labeled as someone who couldn't get the job done, and he even came crying to me, saying, "Please, help me." Jessica laughed heartily at this. Due to my workload, I couldn't help Tom, and he was now isolated in the office. Though it reminded me of my own past, I believed he deserved it for his actions. After sharing our updates, we made plans to meet up and then said goodnight. We continued this routine, and on our third meeting, Jessica confessed her feelings for me, and we started dating. I was thrilled but also hesitant due to our age difference. However, Jessica reassured me that she was happy with me. We didn't live together, but we spent a lot of time at each other's places, enjoying our relationship. I even met her father formally. He had a similar demeanor to Jessica, making it clear where she got her traits. Having quit alcohol and gambling, he looked much healthier. We found common interests and enjoyed our conversations whenever we met. A few years later, Jessica and I got married. During the ceremony, her father repeatedly apologized and thanked me, while Mr. Stevens, with tears in his eyes, blessed us, saying, "You'll be just fine." Reflecting on how much Mr. Stevens had done for me, I couldn't help but cry and express my gratitude repeatedly. Jessica had endured so much, but her wedding was filled with people celebrating her happiness. I realized just how loved she was. Jessica was my beacon of hope. I will never leave her alone. Clenching my fist, I made that resolution in my heart. Perhaps sensing this, she hugged me and said when we were alone, "I'll never leave you alone. I'll always be by your side." I felt a deep connection with Jessica, and my emotions surged. Following that feeling, I embraced her in return. "I won't leave you alone either. I'll make you happy." With those words, she blushed with happiness, and we shared our second kiss of the day, away from everyone else. My name is Kenneth. I have been working as a sales representative at my current cosmetics company for about 10 years. Sales seem to suit my personality, and I've been able to achieve quite a lot within the company. This company recognizes my achievements well, and they always praise me when I perform well in sales, which makes me really happy. However, I have a big complex in my life. I dropped out of high school due to bullying from classmates. Because of that, I am considered a high school dropout. Even so, the employees at this company don't care about my education and only look at my performance, which makes me happy. "Kenneth, you achieve better results than anyone else. Even though you've only been here for about 10 years, you outperform me. How do you manage to do so well?" "It's because of your guidance, John. I wouldn't have made it this far without you. I really appreciate all your help. You must have had talent even before I started teaching you. Still, it makes me happy to hear you say that. I need to work harder as your supervisor too." "Why would you say that?" "You're already achieving great results, John. I'll keep working hard to follow in your footsteps. If you keep achieving like this, I might lose my position. But there's no need to hold back. I want to contribute more to the company, so I'll keep working hard. Please continue to teach me. I'd rather have you teach me, but I've got a lot of experience, so feel free to ask me anything. I'll answer whatever I can. Your support allows me to keep doing this job, John. I really appreciate it. Having an outstanding subordinate like you makes me proud within the company. Keep up the good work for everyone's sake. I seem to be good at sales, so I'll keep honing my skills to use them for the company." John has been very kind to me since I joined, even knowing I dropped out of high school. He sympathized with my situation, knowing that I was bullied in school. It seems John was also bullied during his school years, which affects his empathy. Without John, I might have lost my place in the company and wouldn't be able to work like I do now. Thinking that way, I really like John and want to continue being helpful to him. Of course, working hard benefits me and the company, so it's a win-win. While thinking about that, John called me over. When I went to him, he looked worried. "I'm sorry to bother you when you're very busy. I just need to consult with Kenneth a bit. Can I have a moment of your time?" I just got back from a sales call, so don't worry about the timing. More importantly, what's the consultation about? Actually, a very big opportunity has come our way. For our company, it could be a huge deal. But I feel it might be tough to handle alone. I see, so that's what it's about. Does that mean you need my help, or should I take over the tasks that John is currently handling? I'd be glad if you could help with this deal, but actually, there's another deal with this client that I'd like to entrust to Kenneth. In that case, I'd be happy to help. However, since I'm a bit busy right now, I'll need to pass my current tasks to someone else. I'm really sorry to put you through that, but having Kenneth's help would be a huge relief. I thought it would be tough to handle alone. For you to go out of your way to call and ask for help, it must be a really big deal. I've been with this company for over 20 years, and I've never seen a deal this big. I can't believe I'm the one managing it. This really is a big deal. I'm excited to be a part of it. I'll wrap up my other work quickly and start helping. I'm very happy you're willing to help, but please make sure it doesn't inconvenience others. I'd feel bad about that. Don't worry about that. I'll delegate my tasks properly and assist you with the deal, John. For now, I'll handle the preparations on my own. Let me know when you're ready to jump in, and we'll get started together. So, I started working on the deal with John. I've worked with him before, but never on such a large deal, so I'm nervous. Honestly, I'm good at handling deals, but I've never had a deal that made John nervous, so I wonder what it will be like. That said, John is very skilled at negotiations despite his modesty, so I think there's a lot I can learn from him. I don't know how things will unfold from here, but I plan to give it my all and learn as much as I can. It seems I'll be entrusted with another deal besides the big one, but I wonder what kind of deal that will be. There are still a lot of things I don't know, so I decided to quickly finish my current tasks and go to John. Thinking about this, I delegated my work, managed to free up some time, and headed to John's office. John, I've delegated my tasks. I'm ready to work with you. What should I start with? First, I'll explain the deal. It's worth $500 million. You've never worked on something this big, right? You said it was big, but I didn't realize it was this huge. I'm honored to be part of such a significant deal. When the company first told me about this deal, I was shocked by the sheer amount. I've never handled a deal this big before. If it were me, I wouldn't believe it. Even a $10 million deal seems unreal to me. You must be highly trusted by the company, John. I'm not sure if it's about trust. There just aren't many people who can handle this right now, so I was chosen for this deal. Despite such a huge responsibility, you chose me to help? I'm really grateful for that. You're great at your job, Kenneth. Having you as a partner is reassuring. I'm sorry for asking you on such short notice. Knowing it's a $500 million deal makes me incredibly nervous, but it's a rare opportunity, so I'm also excited. Even as a manager, I'm nervous, so it's understandable. I really appreciate your help. I can't do this alone. Thank you for trusting me. I'll do my best not to let you down. Let's make this happen together. And so, I became a member of the $500 million deal team. Though it's just John and me, so it doesn't feel like a team but more like a partnership. If anything, it feels more like a tag team. The fact that it's a $500 million deal is more nerve-wracking than exciting. I can't imagine what the company would say if we messed up such a big deal. Since this deal was assigned by the company and not something I secured myself, I can't afford to fail. That's why I want to take my time and thoroughly prepare for this negotiation. While thinking about that, John called me again. I forgot to mention, Kenneth, I need you to handle another negotiation too. It's tough, but can you do it? Yes, you mentioned that. But it's not as big as the $500 million deal, right? Of course, it's not as big as that, but it's still a significant deal, so please don't prepare carelessly. Of course, I'll give it my all. I'll work hard to leave a good impression on the client and ensure it leads to the $500 million deal. Actually, we have a $500 million deal that comes first. So, if we don't secure this $500 million deal, the other one might be at risk too. I see, that makes sense. So, you think it would be best if I helped out with this? In that case, we should focus all our efforts on the $500 million deal for now. I'm sorry for the trouble, but I'd appreciate it if you could do that. Still, feel free to proceed with the other deal as well. I'll spend most of my time on the $500 million deal and use any spare time to prepare for the other negotiation. Let's focus on making this big deal a success. I'm really glad I asked you for help, Kenneth. I couldn't do this alone. Thank you. The negotiation hasn't even started yet, so let's keep working hard together. I'll do everything I can to help. So, I began preparing for the negotiation with John. The content of the negotiation was new to me, making it quite challenging. But if I back out now, it would cause trouble for John, so I have to see it through. Additionally, I need to prepare for the other negotiation at the same time. I've never worked this hard before, and it's physically demanding. Since John is also working hard, I don't want to lag behind, but I have to be careful not to push myself too hard. Otherwise, I'll end up getting sick and causing problems for John. After several months of preparation, we were finally ready for the negotiation. We've been working tirelessly, so I'm confident it will succeed. The negotiation is tomorrow. We've faced many challenges, but I'm sure we'll succeed. Let's give it our all. Thank you for all your help, Kenneth. We wouldn't have made it without you. Your ideas were also invaluable. I'm glad I could be of help, John. Anyway, let's keep our focus until the very end. If we fail here, all our preparation will be wasted. You're absolutely right, Kenneth. We've put in so much meticulous preparation, so let's stay sharp and push through to the end. Can I accompany you to the negotiation tomorrow? Initially, I was only supposed to help with preparations, but I've become quite invested. I always intended for you to come along. There are parts you need to understand firsthand. I want us to face this together. I'm happy to hear that. This will be my first time participating in such a big negotiation, and I want to learn as much as possible. There's a lot to learn. Absorb everything you can and use it for the next negotiation. The next one is coming up soon. You're right, John. Since it's with the same company, I'll learn as much as I can. Looking forward to working with you tomorrow. Thus, I will accompany John to the negotiation. Even though I helped with the preparations, I'm extremely nervous about the actual negotiation. I decided to do some research at home about the company. It turns out they have a huge office building. I've never dealt with a company this big, so I don't know what to expect. But I'll just have to present what we've prepared and do my best, despite the nerves. And then, the day of the negotiation arrived. I met up with John in front of the client's company, ready to tackle the deal. As we entered the company, we were greeted by the representative, James. Thank you for coming today. We've been looking forward to this negotiation. Let's head to the conference room. Thank you for meeting us. We've been looking forward to this negotiation as well and have prepared thoroughly. This negotiation represents a very significant contract for us, so I'm glad to hear you've prepared well. Let's get started. And so, the $500 million negotiation began. It started more casually than I expected, which helped ease my nerves a bit. Even though the client is a large company, a $500 million contract is rare for them too, and James seemed a bit nervous as well. Hearing that made me feel more at ease, and we were able to proceed smoothly with the negotiation. Had James been intimidating or overbearing, we might have failed. But James was very kind and acknowledged our proposal, making all our preparation worth it. After several hours, the negotiation finally concluded. James clapped and smiled as soon as it ended. This was the best negotiation I've had. Usually, I'm exhausted by the end, but this time I was excited throughout, so I'm not tired at all. Thank you for saying that. We spent months preparing for this negotiation, so it's wonderful to hear that. Kenneth helped a lot with this negotiation, so it's reassuring to hear your feedback. How did you find the content? We had similar negotiations with other companies, but none were as exciting as this one. I never thought a negotiation could feel like this. Your words make all our preparation worthwhile. Thank you for your applause. Regarding this negotiation, can we proceed with the contract? I apologize if it sounds like I'm rushing you. It's natural to be eager about a $500 million contract. Of course, we would like to proceed with the contract. Really, thank you. We look forward to working with you. Thank you very much. We're delighted as well. I trust both of you, and I hope we can have a long-term relationship. Thank you for saying that. Because of your kindness, James, we were able to proceed without feeling too nervous. Thus, after months of preparation, John and I successfully concluded the $500 million negotiation and secured the contract. It was a challenging few months, but securing the contract made it all worthwhile. If we hadn't secured this contract, the upcoming negotiation would have been tough too, so I'm glad we persevered. However, the next negotiation also involves a larger amount than I'm used to, so I can't let my guard down. But after overcoming the $500 million deal, I feel less pressured and more confident about handling it. James seemed aware of the upcoming negotiation and brought it up. I understand there's another negotiation coming up. My subordinate will handle it, so please take care of them. I trust it will go well. Thank you for saying that. Kenneth will handle that negotiation, so please take good care of him. I believe Kenneth is very capable, so I look forward to another great negotiation. Let's keep in touch. We will prepare thoroughly for the negotiation. Thank you so much for this opportunity. We look forward to working with you. It's very gratifying to be expected to perform well by someone like James. At the same time, I felt a surge of pressure knowing the high expectations placed on me. Even though we just concluded a $500 million deal, the perfect outcome has raised the bar even higher. I intend to meet those expectations, but no matter how well I prepare, I can't predict how James's subordinate will react. So, I decided to prepare even more thoroughly for the next negotiation. However, I was feeling too nervous to focus on my work, so I decided to consult with John. John, about the next negotiation, I'm feeling really nervous. James has such high expectations, and I'm not sure if I can meet them. It's rare to see you so unsure, Kenneth. Even after experiencing a $500 million negotiation, it doesn't mean you're used to all negotiations. If it were a regular negotiation, I might be, but with such high expectations from James, I worry my usual approach won't be enough. One thing I can say is that you're an excellent salesperson. If you prepare well and consider the client's needs, I'm sure they'll appreciate your efforts and the results will be positive. Hearing that from you gives me confidence, John. I'll give my all in the next negotiation and make the company proud. I don't know what you're misunderstanding, Kenneth, but the company already recognizes you. However, striving to do your best is always good. It might be a bit of a selfish goal, but I want to be even more recognized and get promoted. My educational background might make it hard, though. This company doesn't care about educational background. If you deliver results in the next negotiation, the company will surely recognize it. I'll believe in that and push forward. For now, I'll prepare for the next negotiation. I'll make sure to deliver great results, so watch me. And so, I prepared for the next negotiation. This time, preparing for the negotiation took longer because I was doing it alone. However, since the amount involved is smaller than the previous deal, there is less to prepare. That said, I can't afford to slack off, so I need to approach it with a sense of urgency. After a few months of preparation, I finally completed everything. With less than a week until the negotiation, I was feeling a bit rushed, but with John's help, I managed to finish in time. The day before the negotiation, I decided to thank John. Thank you for helping me with the preparations, John. Because of you, I managed to get everything done. I'm confident we'll secure the contract. No need to thank me. You helped me before, so I'm just returning the favor. I'm looking forward to hearing good news from you. I owe you a lot, John, so I wanted to properly thank you. I'm nervous, but I'll give it my all. James was a great guy, so I hope his subordinate is just as nice. If his subordinate is like James, I'll be able to approach the negotiation without too much anxiety and finish successfully. Regardless of who you face, give it your best. You worked really hard on the preparation, so if you convey that sincerely, they'll appreciate it. Hearing that from you puts me at ease. I'll do my best and make sure to bring back good news. With that, I left the office and headed to the client's company. Upon arrival, I was greeted by the new representative, Alex. "Thank you for coming today. James spoke highly of you, so I've been looking forward to this. I've also been looking forward to this negotiation. I've spent months preparing for it. If someone as capable as you prepared, it must be an impressive proposal. Let's head to the conference room." Apparently, James holds an executive position. So, even though Alex is his subordinate, he is a manager. I assumed James's subordinate would be of a similar rank to me, but Alex being in a higher position made me nervous. Nevertheless, being nervous wouldn't help, so I had to focus on delivering my prepared materials and my message. When I passionately presented my case, it seemed to resonate with Alex, and we secured the contract. James mentioned enjoyable negotiations, but I didn't expect it to be this exceptional. "I look forward to working with you. Thank you so much for the contract. Including the deal with James, we look forward to a long-term relationship. I'm happy to work with someone like you, Kenneth. I foresee exciting times ahead. If you have any questions, feel free to ask. I'm glad to work with you too, Alex. I'd also like to greet James. Let's continue to have a great partnership." With that, I left the client's office and returned to my company. Technically, I could have gone straight home, but I wanted to share the good news with John. When I arrived, John greeted me with a tense expression. It seemed he was curious about whether I had succeeded in the negotiation. However, the tense look on his face suggested that he also felt a bit anxious. Even though he trusted me, it appeared he couldn't fully relax while sending me out alone. Knowing John cared so much made me happy. To ease his mind, I decided to share the results immediately. "John, we secured the contract. Thank you so much for your support. I knew you could do it, Kenneth. Although I was a bit anxious, I trusted you. I couldn't have done it without you, John. Thank you again. I look forward to working together. Securing the contract is just the beginning. There will be challenges ahead, so don't hesitate to reach out if you need help." Having John on my side is incredibly reassuring. Honestly, without him, the negotiation might not have gone as well. For now, I'm relieved we secured the contract. As I was relaxing, a man entered the office. Not knowing who he was, I decided to ask. "Excuse me, who might you be? If you're looking for someone, I can call them for you. I'm here to see someone named Kenneth, who recently came to my company for a negotiation." "I'm Kenneth. What can I do for you?" The man introduced himself as Daniel and said he worked at the same company as James and Alex. Having never met him before, I was unsure why he had come all the way to visit. However, he seemed quite angry, so I decided to handle the situation calmly. "My subordinate, Alex, seems to have made a mistake. I heard from someone that you only have a middle school education. We can't contract with someone so unqualified. This contract is void. Voiding the contract because of my educational background is unacceptable. I spent months preparing for this negotiation. And Alex fully understood and accepted our terms. But you didn't tell Alex about your education, did you? If he had known you were a high school dropout, he wouldn't have made this contract. So, it's void. Are you saying you're going to sever ties with our company just because of my education?" "That's exactly what I'm saying. This is our only contract with your company, so we're ending it and cutting ties." With that, Daniel tore the contract to pieces. He seemed serious about voiding the contract. I decided to make him understand the situation since he seemed unaware of some crucial details. Ending our relationship means canceling the $500 million contract as well. I'll report this to James. Wait, what did you just say? Did you say a $500 million contract? And how do you know James? You might not be aware, but our company recently signed a $500 million contract with yours. James handled it and was very excited about it. Wait, I haven't heard anything about that. If James is involved, this changes everything. Don't report this to James. Daniel was visibly shaken, realizing this was not going as he expected. He thought he could belittle me, but hearing the name of someone higher up rattled him. Still, it's outrageous to come unannounced and try to void a contract without any verification. As we continued our conversation, James arrived at the company. Apparently, John had contacted James, who came immediately upon hearing about the situation. Seeing James, Daniel's face turned pale. The unexpected turn of events left him in shock. "Daniel, what are you doing? This company is very important to us. How could you look down on them because of their education? Why are you here, James?" I contacted him to come. It seemed unreasonable to void a contract for such a reason, so I wanted James to verify it. "Thank you for contacting me. Please disregard everything this man said. I will ensure he faces strict consequences within our company." "What do you mean by consequences?" "I was just mistaken. How can you call barging into a company and belittling an employee a simple mistake? You'll be transferred to a branch in the countryside." "No, this can't be." Daniel fell to his knees in despair, realizing the worst had happened. But James was right in everything he said. Not taking action against Daniel would be detrimental to their company. But the contract was torn up, and I was deeply insulted. "It doesn't feel right. I sincerely apologize for that. It's clear we need to improve our employee training. Daniel will face severe consequences. It's unfortunate, considering how well things went with James." Being treated this way by Daniel was disappointing. "I'm truly sorry for the disappointment. We will ensure this never happens again. Could you please continue the contract? Since you insist, if Daniel is not involved in our contracts, we can continue working together." "Thank you very much. And again, I'm deeply sorry. Kenneth is an exceptional person despite his education, and looking down on him is unacceptable. Please ensure this doesn't happen again." Though it was painful to be looked down upon and emotionally taxing, it meant a lot to be defended by John. Knowing my company values me this much, I'll continue to work hard. From what I heard through James, Daniel was transferred to a regional branch, but the rumors spread quickly. And he eventually quit because he couldn't handle the scrutiny. I'll keep working hard for this company that truly appreciates me. Andrew, the CEO of Kirkland, Mr. Smith, called my name. He furrowed his brow and stared intently at my face. "Andrew Nichols," he repeated my name loudly. Cold sweat trickled down my back. Everyone in the department was looking at me with puzzled expressions. I hurriedly tried to stop Mr. Smith from speaking further, but he blurted out, "You don't know. He is," revealing my identity. However, the surprising turn of events continued. My beautiful colleague, Michelle, let out a small gasp. "No way. My name is Andrew Nichols, 43 years old. I work part-time at a major design company. There are times in life when things just don't go well. I'm in such a phase right now. If I were to compare it to surfing, it's like waiting endlessly for a good wave that never comes, just floating around. I hope I can ride a great wave someday." "Hey, Andrew." I was spacing out a bit when my manager, Kelvin, called out to me. "Yes, what is it?" When I looked up, Kelvin said without even looking at me, "I've put the design data in the shared folder. Print it out and check the contents." Nodding at the order from Kelvin, who was 6 years younger than me, I proceeded to print it out. As I heard the sound of the paper being ejected from the printer and was about to stand up, I heard a woman's voice. "Andrew, since I'm going that way, I'll take it." Looking towards the printer, I saw Michelle smiling beside it. Kelvin clicked his tongue quietly and looked at Michelle. "Michelle, you should let Andrew handle the chores." His voice was not sharp and rough as it was with me, but rather a sweet, coaxing tone. Kelvin's likes and dislikes are clearly evident in his tone of voice. Michelle furrowed her eyebrows slightly. "I just finished printing my stuff too." She replied briefly and started walking towards me. With her beautiful, medium-length black hair, she is a stunning beauty. Petite and slim, her figure is fantastic. It's no wonder Kelvin can't help but be enamored. "Here, this is Kelvin's design. Please check it. And, could you also take a look at mine?" I took the 2 sheets of paper and placed Kelvin's on his desk. "The colors and overall layout, what do you think?" "I'm stuck but can't pinpoint exactly what it is." I scrutinized the design. It was clean and had a warm feel. Her designs are always so sophisticated, and I learn a lot from them. What did your client request? Just as I asked that, Kelvin interrupted. Michelle. You don't need to ask an old part-timer, I can check it for you. Indeed, in this situation, it would be more appropriate to have the boss review it. However, Michelle said, I'd like to hear various opinions. I'd like you to do the final check, so please give me a little more time. And bowed politely. Is that so? Final check? Okay, then. It's better not to look at it now. Got it, Kelvin nodded, seemingly satisfied. Michelle is adept at handling Kelvin. She chooses her words carefully and always responds with a soft smile. Her words and actions are devoid of any thorns and captivate everyone, regardless of gender. She bowed to Kelvin once more and then turned back to me. My client wants something approachable and friendly. With that in mind, I took another look at the design. In that case, the logo and the title part could be a bit rounder and softer in font. Also, the color scheme could be a tone brighter. And this part would stand out if you added a bold blue or a darker shade. Michelle let out a soft sigh, and I snapped back to reality. I seem to have talked too much. Indeed. Andrew, you're amazing. Thank you. I bowed my head repeatedly in response. No. I'm sorry, I'm just an amateur. As I said that, Michelle looked at me thoughtfully. An amateur. Her large almond-shaped eyes pierced through me. I was flustered and quickly tried to explain. Well, I just like looking at designs. That's why I ended up here as a part-timer. Why did I join the company as a part-timer at this age? People have asked me that countless times. Each time, I explained that I've always loved looking at flyers and posters. Michelle sighed, seemingly giving up. Your eye for detail is impressive. I'd love to see a flyer you've designed someday, she said with a smile before returning to her desk. Although she mentioned wanting to hear various opinions from some staff, Michelle got straight to work. Feeling a bit puzzled, I started checking Kelvin's flyer. I sighed. As usual, there were many typos. The design was sophisticated, intellectual, and excellent. It perfectly matched the client's expectations. However, it seemed Kelvin wasn't too interested in the content, leading to numerous mistakes in the text. I called out to Kelvin. There are some errors in the content again. Before I could finish speaking, Kelvin interrupted. Just fix it as you see fit. I nodded slightly and began correcting the data. A few days later. When I arrived at work in the morning, the department was buzzing with excitement. As I tilted my head in confusion, Michelle rushed over. Her cheeks were unusually flushed, and her eyes were sparkling with excitement. Mr. Smith, the CEO of Kirkland, from the UK headquarters is coming for a visit next month. I see, that certainly is a big deal. Kelvin was visibly excited. Everyone in the department was abuzz with the possibility of Mr. Smith seeing their flyers. Kelvin was talking about posting all the flyers we had made on a whiteboard. It had nothing to do with me. I just quietly continued my usual tasks. However, I made sure to clean every nook and cranny thoroughly. I wanted to avoid any non-work-related criticisms. Though the visit was said to be a month away, I immediately started cleaning the break room. And a month later, Mr. Smith arrived at our US branch. Apparently, he was going to inspect each floor in order. Everyone was nervously working that day. Michelle was trying to maintain a calm demeanor, but it was clear she was excited, which was a little endearing. A few hours later, Mr. Smith finally appeared in our department. Our department manager, Kyle, and Kelvin welcomed him with stiff smiles. While I was preparing the tea in the break room, which was likely being served on other floors as well, Mr. Smith greeted everyone with a smile, causing a stir. Glancing around the department, I saw him attaching a large poster to the whiteboard. The whiteboard mainly displayed several of Kelvin's meticulously designed flyers, but most of them ended up hidden behind the large poster. I couldn't help but chuckle inwardly. Mr. Smith seemed to be questioning what was wrong with the poster. The department was abuzz, and murmured discussions began, but few people spoke up clearly. Among them, Kelvin said, "Is it the color scheme? Perhaps a brighter palette?" It was impressive that he could speak up in this atmosphere. However, the answer was no. Mr. Smith was becoming increasingly displeased. He furrowed his brows, seemingly wondering why no one could figure out something so simple. I quickly wrote a note while serving tea, and handed it to Michelle. As Mr. Smith stared intently at everyone, I discreetly placed the tea on the table. Without looking at me, he gulped down the tea. I was relieved that I had made the tea slightly lukewarm. Everyone was shrinking under his demeanor when suddenly, "Yes." Michelle timidly raised her hand. Mr. Smith fixed his gaze on Michelle. "That design, it resembles the one released by S Company in 2021. Mr. Smith's face lit up, and he was about to say something when Michelle added. As Andrew pointed out in his note, Michelle said, showing the note I had written, causing everyone to gasp in surprise. I furrowed my brow. I really shouldn't take credit for this myself. Michelle looked at me and stuck out her tongue playfully. Mr. Smith looked around and, realizing that it was I who had just served the tea, grabbed my hand and repeatedly said, "Great." This was a test, after all. It was about whether those handling designs were properly checking other companies' works. For someone like me, it was a famous flyer since I love looking at various posters and flyers. But it seemed difficult for everyone else. Mr. Smith shook my hands vigorously, making me dizzy. And suddenly, "Andrew," he said my name. He furrowed his brow and stared intently at my face. "Andrew Nichols," he repeated my name loudly. Cold sweat trickled down my back. Everyone in the department was looking at me with puzzled expressions. I hurriedly tried to stop Mr. Smith from speaking further, but he blurted out excitedly, "Don't you know? He's the famous painter Andrew Nichols. I can't believe we met here. I have loved drawing since I was a child. My passion led me to attend a high school specializing in art, then to an art college in New York, where I spent every day painting. Initially, I excelled in landscape painting, but as I studied more, I became interested in abstract art. In particular, the style of self-expressive abstraction, which involves conveying one's inner self through creative activity, deeply moved me in my youth. After graduating from college, I went to the UK alone. The UK is a famous place for action painting. Action painting involves splashing or dripping paint onto a canvas to create a piece. Many artists create their works with refined movements. In this method, the act itself is often considered more important than the finished painting. I was attracted not to action painting itself but to painting in front of an audience and having them evaluate it. I wanted to challenge myself to see how my paintings would be received in the UK. With that feeling, I went to the UK. In the beginning, it was tough. I heard comments like, "Give me my time back and it's boring." My style of painting abstract art in front of an audience was a bit too subdued compared to the flashy action painting. However, I did not give up. I believed that if I kept painting, the path would open up. 6 months after arriving in the UK, my work started to gain recognition. The audience grew, and sometimes people would even purchase my completed paintings. And just a few months before my working holiday visa expired, a few people who liked my paintings suggested I apply for an artist visa. Recommended by several agents, I obtained the artist visa and began taking on work that those agents required. Sometimes, I even held solo exhibitions. The value of my paintings gradually increased. Some people bought them as investments. If recognized by prominent figures, even a currently inexpensive painting could skyrocket in value someday. Though there was no guarantee that my paintings would achieve that, my work steadily gained more fans. However, I gradually began to lose confidence in my paintings. My art was created in collaboration with the audience. I would listen to their reactions and paint something that exceeded their imaginations. For example, if I painted a spot white and someone in the audience said, "That should be pink," I would imagine what that white spot would look like if it were pink. Then, I would think, "No. This spot needs this color," and apply a deep purple paint. The audience would cheer. The deep purple was more fitting than the white or the suggested pink. That's how my paintings were completed. There were also intense debates with my agents. Through these discussions, my paintings were continually refined. But then, at some point, people stopped giving me feedback on my paintings. It's unthinkable to give you suggestions. Every time I heard that, I felt unsteady. Is this really okay? Is this painting truly perfect as it is? Is there no color that could surpass this? Little by little, my heart sank as if entangled in darkness, and I eventually lost the ability to paint. No matter how much I painted, I couldn't figure out what was right. I bowed my head to the agents who had patiently watched over me and returned to the US. For a while, I spent my savings idly. Seeing my state, my family asked me to draw something for them. I knew they were trying to give me a push. But I couldn't muster the desire to paint. It was my niece who saved me. My sister's child had turned 3. She asked me to draw colorful cartoon characters. Unable to ignore a child's request, I mimicked drawing cartoon characters, and she beamed with joy, her eyes sparkling. It had been a long time since I'd seen such a face. Drawing these colorful cartoon characters was fun. As an experiment, I painted a red outfit black. She complained that it looked like a villain, but after a while, she asked me to draw the black-colored character again. When I asked why, she said, "This black one's cool too." Apparently, she had grown to like it over time. As I continued doing this, I found myself able to face the canvas again. But I was still far from the passion I had in my youth. I wanted to create passionate paintings once more. Then my sister suggested that if I couldn't paint for myself, I should paint for others. Painting for others, it was an idea I hadn't considered much. After a few months of indecision, I applied for a part-time job at a design company. Working as a designer didn't feel quite right to me. I thought that being surrounded by someone else's creations might bring about some change in my awareness. With that feeling, I applied, and here I am now. Encouraged by Mr. Smith, I ended up talking about my past. Everyone looked at me with eyes full of disbelief. Mr. Smith handed me his phone and spoke with a smile. "Look at this painting. This is one I bought during a street performance and had it framed." I widened my eyes. Honestly, I didn't remember when I painted it. But from the style, it was probably from within my first year in the UK. At that time, after completing a piece, I would ask the audience if anyone wanted to buy it. Some paintings didn't sell at all. This painting had been purchased by the young Mr. Smith. Don't say you've lost confidence. I became your fan because of this painting. Since then, I've bought several pieces I wanted and cherished them at home. Mr. Smith said while showing the photo of my first painting to everyone in the department. As my eyes welled up with emotion at that moment. "No way!" Michelle's small scream echoed through the department. Michelle rushed to her desk, rummaged through her bag, and came up to me. "Here." She handed me a pass case. Both Mr. Smith and I were astonished when we saw its contents. It contained a photo of the same painting that Mr. Smith had first bought. I took this photo during a family trip to the UK. I was moved and asked the buyer if I could take a picture. They kindly agreed. Michelle said nostalgically, and Mr. Smith beamed. That was definitely me. What a miracle! The three of us met nearly 20 years ago in the UK, far from here. He said, giving us a hearty hug. Both Michelle and I turned bright red from the embrace. He sternly ordered me to create new works and then hurried off to his next destination. He invited me to dinner when he would come back to the US to pick up my new work. I humbly nodded. Everyone in the department had witnessed the exchange. After Mr. Smith left, I was bombarded with questions. My past was just as I had told it. I had already explained why I joined the company as a part-timer. Still, their curiosity seemed endless, and they wouldn't let me go. At that moment, Michelle quietly stepped in between everyone and said, "This is the brochure I was asked to create yesterday. Andrew, could you try making it?" I furrowed my brow. "But, isn't this a job for a full-time employee?" Michelle persisted, holding out the specifications. "You need a challenge, right?" she asked, and I timidly nodded. Here I was, 43 years old, being guided by a 35-year-old woman. It was quite a pathetic sight. Instead of painting freely, I was to create a brochure according to the client's wishes. This was surprisingly difficult. At the same time, it was fun. The impression changes drastically with a single color or font. I had noticed this while checking the works made by other employees, but creating something from scratch felt different and enjoyable. The next day, I showed the completed brochure to Michelle. We moved to the meeting space to focus, comparing the printed material with the data on my laptop. Michelle pointed at the photo in the brochure. This photo, can it be more impactful? For example, changing the way it's cropped. As Michelle pondered, an idea came to me. In that case, maybe we could change the style. I adjusted the style of the photo using the software on my computer, and Michelle exclaimed in delight. Yes! This is perfect! It matches the image exactly. The layout, colors, fonts, and text arrangement. I made changes while seeking Michelle's opinion on each one. These changes dramatically improved the brochure. It was fun. As I worked intensely on the computer, Michelle smiled beside me. This is the kind of collaboration you were looking for, right? Her words made me look at her intently. Having third-party feedback on my work. Listening to those opinions and further enhancing the piece. Yes, that's right, it was a very valuable interaction. When I expressed my gratitude, Michelle smiled. Well, could you show me how you paint sometime? My opinions might not be very stimulating, but... Michelle looked down, searching for words. The performance I saw in the UK, it moved me, and I'd like to see it again, if possible. It's just a genuine request. Michelle's face gradually turned red. I smiled. Of course, I'd be honored. I really like your designs, Michelle. I'm very interested to see how my painting would evolve based on your input. Michelle's eyes widened, and she covered her mouth. At that moment, I caught a small voice. I'd like to see it too. When did he get here? Kelvin, who had been talking quietly in the meeting space with us, suddenly appeared. Michelle mumbled, "You should learn to read the room." And Kelvin seemed deflated. Although he wasn't the most pleasant person, I felt a bit sorry for him knowing his feelings for Michelle. Well, if I ever get to the point where I can perform in front of people again, I'd love to show it to everyone in the department, I said. Kelvin forced a weak smile and replied, "I'll look forward to that," before leaving. It's clear that the real reason Kelvin came here wasn't for my art, but for Michelle. She's 8 years younger than me. Although he probably just has a pure interest in my work, Kelvin will have to reconsider his attitude if he wants to be noticed by her. It's a bit pitiful, really. A few days later, I invited Michelle to my studio. Nothing had yet been created in this studio. After returning to the US, I rented a small but high-ceilinged apartment to use as a studio to break out of my slump. It was a space that could be used as a studio. However, no matter how many times I picked up a brush here, I couldn't create a satisfactory piece. Standing in front of the canvas, I froze. What should I paint? I had been pondering this for days, but nothing came together. My abstract paintings were heavily influenced by my inner emotional landscape. My current feelings? The encounter with Mr. Smith? The miracle of the three of us meeting in the UK 20 years ago? None of it felt right. I glanced back. Though my painting style didn't involve splashing paint around, I had instructed Michelle to wear something that could get dirty just in case. Today, Michelle was dressed in a white shirt and jeans. If the paint splashes, it might look stylish. Seeing her blush and smile, an image formed in my mind. And a few hours later, my painting was complete. This, if it's not too presumptuous. Michelle's voice was trembling. Is this my image? I nodded, blushing. It was no wonder she noticed. I had incorporated all of her suggestions during the process. However, there was one part one insisted on. The heart in the center. I had a clear vision for its color. A gentle green and a strong red, and my feelings are in there too. I surprised even myself. I had fallen in love with Michelle. It became clear to me as I painted. This love might be unrequited. But that was okay. That realization gave me the strength to move forward. I had regained the confidence to paint. Would you accept this painting? It might be strange for an old guy like me to put my feelings into a painting. Michelle shook her head vigorously. I'm happy. I like you too, Andrew. Her unexpected reply made my eyes widen in shock. What? But I'm already 43. Michelle's eyes, brimming with tears, looked at me. Working with you, I was drawn to your kindness. I also thought there was something special about you. I recalled my interactions with Michelle at work. When I asked for your advice once, it was so precise that my flyer turned out better than ever. I thought you must have some design experience. But when I found out you were the street performer who moved me in UK, my feelings for you grew even stronger. Michelle took my hand. I thought I wasn't worthy. Is this painting really your feelings? Is it really me? Tears welled up in her eyes. I felt the same. I never thought someone as kind and beautiful as you would like me. Until just now, I thought this love was impossible. Are you sure about me? Michelle smiled at me. And as she smiled, beautiful tears streamed down her cheeks. I gently wiped them away with my index finger and hugged her. A few years later, I was painting quietly in my studio in the UK. There was a knock on the door. It's almost time to get ready. It was my wife, Michelle, peeking in timidly. I turned and smiled. Michelle's eyes were fixed on the painting behind me. It's beautiful. Today's theme was encounter. Since the day we got together, we've been through various encounters and moved to the UK as a married couple. This move was facilitated by Mr. Smith, who arranged for Michelle to transfer to the UK headquarters. After that, I quit my part-time job and started painting again. When Michelle was first approached about the transfer, she showed a sad expression and said, "They probably thought if they transferred me, you would come along since Mr. Smith is a huge fan of you. They don't really need me." I slowly shook my head. A company CEO like him would never make a transfer decision based on such calculations. Your skills were recognized, Michelle. Be confident. Just as I said, Michelle is now showing remarkable achievements in the UK. Her unique softness and sensitivity are rare and highly valued in the UK. Michelle's status has steadily risen, and now she's on a first-name basis with Mr. Smith, saying, "Michael should be arriving soon. So hurry and get changed," and inviting him to our home parties. Our current life is all thanks to that fateful encounter. This painting will be perfect for decorating a corner of today's home party. I kissed my beloved wife on the forehead, took the painting, and opened the door from the studio to the living room with a peaceful heart. Are you planning to expense this? When I expressed my opinion to Karen, the manager holding a first-class airline ticket, her eyebrow twitched. It doesn't affect your money, so it doesn't matter, does it? You will be my slave forever. Just follow me quietly. She snapped back and started walking toward her seat. I wasn't particularly looking forward to it, but my first time in first class was overwhelming. The spacious seats offered a decent amount of privacy. I was amazed that the wealthy turned travel into an experience, but Karen was lost in thought, staring into the distance. How much time had passed? Not even an hour had passed since takeoff when a young flight attendant, looking pale, reported to a senior-looking attendant. The captain and co-pilot have collapsed. Her voice reached our ears, and the commotion quickly spread. Even Karen's face turned pale, her eyes wide open. We needed to act before the cabin descended into panic. I stood up and declared, "Leave it to me. I'll fly the plane. My name is Neil. I am in my 40s and work in sales. However, it's not a company I started working for as a new graduate. I switched to this job 5 years ago, so my experience is limited. The reason I decided to switch to this company was that I had some knowledge about the parts and products the company manufactures. My previous job was entirely unrelated to sales. Therefore, I often find myself confused by the unfamiliar work, and my sales performance is far from impressive. But I enjoy introducing products based on what I know and the needs of my clients. The joy of closing a deal when the client is satisfied is unmatched. Of course, the company doesn't exist for my satisfaction. As a publicly traded company, it must deliver results that satisfy shareholders and pursue profits, which is the essence of a company in a capitalist society. I understand that it can't be helped. That's why my lack of focus on sales performance often earns me scoldings from Karen. "Neil, could I have a moment?" Karen signaled me with her hand, and I approached her desk. When she stood up with documents in hand, I sighed inwardly. As expected, she headed for the meeting room. When she calls me here, it's usually to lecture me about my sales performance. Neil, what is the meaning of this? Karen slapped the documents on the table in front of me with a loud clap. I immediately understood what she wanted to say when I saw the documents. They needed more time to decide on our product order, so it wasn't an immediate decision. On a recent business trip, I was supposed to close a deal for a self-generation project with a large company. However, after hearing them out, it became clear that more discussions were needed to ensure the order matched their needs. If successful, it would improve their power generation efficiency and significantly reduce the costs of implementing our products. So, we decided to reconsider and schedule another meeting. However, Karen didn't seem convinced by my explanation and questioned me sternly. So, what benefit does this bring to our company? What you're doing seems like a loss for us. But is it really good to only think about our own profits? I understood what Karen was trying to say. My proposal would lower our product's order price significantly, even though it would reduce the client's costs. Given the size of the deal, the loss isn't small. Despite my limited experience, I instinctively knew that pursuing only our own profits wouldn't lead to good outcomes. Business, as I understand it, involves generating money by bringing joy to the client. If we can't build a win-win relationship, the company will decline. I believe, without concrete evidence, that making proposals that benefit the client will eventually come back to us. Karen looked down at me with cold eyes and sighed deeply. This is no time for idealistic talk. If you keep doing things like this, the company won't survive. Understand? This isn't just your problem. Each employee has a family, and we carry that responsibility. Don't act on your own whims. Indeed, if sales don't materialize, it affects the company's survival. However, this deal still secures a sufficient profit margin. Otherwise, I wouldn't be able to propose it. As I was contemplating how to explain this to Karen, she burst out at me with red eyes. You probably think I'm just a younger woman talking big. No matter what you think, I am your boss. Just follow your superior's orders quietly. I have no intention of looking down on Karen because she's a woman or younger. On the contrary, I respect her for demonstrating her managerial skills despite being younger than me. Although I wish she wouldn't be so obsessed with quotas and numbers or have such a high-handed attitude. I understand that these stem from her insecurities. If you don't agree, then work your way up to management. Then I might acknowledge you. Although, it's probably impossible for someone as incompetent as you. With that, Karen threw the documents at me and left the meeting room. I don't have any intention of becoming a manager, I just want to live a simple life without dwelling on the past. If I spent more time chasing quotas or changed my sales methods to be more aggressive, I could probably achieve some results. However, I don't mind being called incompetent because I have no interest in the race for promotion. I intend to stick to my beliefs and not be too constrained by Karen. One day after work, I was having dinner with Michaela, a colleague. Michaela works in the accounting department and has been a mentor to me since I was new to the job, teaching me about expense reporting and other things. Although she's in her early 30s, she's quick and sharp at work, well respected by her colleagues, and popular among the male employees because of her beauty. Despite this, she has a straightforward personality and is also liked by the female employees. Michaela considers me easy to talk to despite being older, and she often invites me for drinks. Today, Michaela had said, I had something to discuss, so we planned to meet at our usual bar after my fieldwork. Thanks for always putting up with my requests, Michaela said as we clinked our beer mugs together. A beer after work is especially delicious. It feels even better when drinking with Michaela. As we enjoyed our drinks and food, her cheeks began to flush slightly. It seemed like a good time to bring up her consultation. Seizing a pause in our conversation, I asked, So, what did you want to discuss? You sounded pretty serious. I recalled her worried voice when she asked me to hear her out. While she'd often sought my advice before, those were usually lighter topics like being hit on by a superior or being caught in a dispute between female employees. Michaela didn't take those too seriously herself, so I would just listen to her complaints and give my opinion if she asked. However, this time, her voice had sounded unusually serious, which had me concerned. Depending on what it was, it might be beyond what I could handle alone. As I entered the bar we agreed on, I was somewhat relieved to find Michaela waiting with her usual expression. Still, she might have been putting on a brave face, considerate of my work fatigue. She might even be hesitating to talk about it now. When I brought up the consultation, Michaela looked troubled, confirming my suspicions. I waited for her to gather her thoughts. It might be a burden for you, but I can't handle it alone. I can't promise to solve it, but don't bear it alone. If it helps, just tell me. When I said that, Michaela lowered her voice and began, actually. The issue Michaela wanted to discuss was work-related. Karen had handed her a receipt for an airline ticket as an expense report, but it was a first-class ticket. Of course, the company only allows business class for employee expenses, and using first class is out of the question. If one insists on using first class, they have to cover the cost personally. However, despite being a manager and fully aware of this, Karen had given Michaela a first-class ticket receipt. That's a problem. Did you process it? When I asked, Michaela shook her head. Even if I were to process it, it would still have to go through management. Besides, if this gets approved once, I fear it will become a recurring issue. That's true. Should I talk to Karen on your behalf? When I said that, Michaela's expression brightened for a moment, but then she looked down and shook her head. I thought she was hesitant to drag me into the problem or worried about revealing Karen's actions to others, but Michaela had more to say. Actually, I was given this. Michaela placed an envelope on the table and slid it towards me. When I looked inside after Michaela gestured, I saw a considerable amount of money. I glanced inside and then placed the envelope back in front of Michaela. There's something else in there besides the money, Michaela murmured, so I hurriedly pulled the envelope back toward me. As I looked inside again, I noticed a piece of paper. I took it out and carefully opened it. The note contained a brief message. Thank you for everything. How about this? Please continue to support me. The elegant handwriting conveyed an undeniable authority. It was clear Karen intended to buy Michaela's loyalty with this significant amount of money. Of course, Michaela could simply refuse. However, refusing could affect Michaela's future position, and Karen's overall work performance is indeed highly regarded. Many employees are fed up with her arrogant and high-handed attitude. But no one denies her managerial skills and her ability to support her subordinates when it matters. Such a scandal would undoubtedly cause a stir and harm the company. Still, I voiced my honest thoughts. Thank you for confiding in me. Considering the future, keeping quiet might not be the best course of action. Yes, thinking about the future. Michaela seemed to have considered the long-term implications as well. If this incident were swept under the rug, it could set a precedent for Karen to misuse company funds again. Since it was an overseas trip, a first-class ticket is not just double the price of a business-class one. If this continues, what should I do? Michaela, always so composed, now had tears in her eyes as she struggled with this dilemma. Even though I usually prioritize my job satisfaction over the company's well-being, I felt the need to help her this time. I'll talk to Karen about this. I have frequent opportunities to speak with her, so I can bring it up. When I said this, Michaela looked relieved. I took the envelope from Michaela and resumed enjoying our meal. The next day, as soon as I arrived at work, Karen summoned me. I had completed my sales as planned yesterday and had done nothing out of line, so there was no apparent reason for a reprimand. If there was something to discuss, it might be about the self-generation project contract she had cautioned me about earlier. However, unlike her usual manner, Karen had nothing with her this time. I sensed something different about Karen's demeanor. Usually, her sharp gaze pierces through when she has something to say, but today she seemed different. Feeling uneasy about what she might say, I headed to the meeting room. To my surprise, Karen made an unexpected statement. Neil, I need you to be honest with me. Have you been harassing any of your colleagues? Completely taken aback by the question, I widened my eyes in surprise. Harassing? Has someone complained? If so, I want to apologize, so please tell me. I couldn't think of anything I might have done to be considered harassment. Mixed feelings of frustration and the desire to apologize if I had indeed wronged someone welled up inside me. I must have looked genuinely troubled. Because Karen's face became even more complicated. I can't tell you who complained. Just answer my questions. Now, where were you and who were you with after work yesterday? Karen, who normally never pried into personal matters, was now demanding an explanation of my whereabouts. Having nothing to hide, I truthfully said I had been out drinking with Michaela. I expected this to clear things up, but Karen's expression turned visibly displeased when I mentioned Michaela's name. Is that so? And what exactly were you talking about? This was the perfect opportunity to bring up the expense issue with Karen, but the sudden turn of events left my mind in disarray. I hesitated, and Karen sighed in exasperation. You're slow at work but quick to hit on women. We'll discuss this further some other time. For now. Karen abruptly ended the conversation, as if to say the matter was closed, and suddenly announced. Unfortunately, it's been decided that you'll be accompanying me on a business trip tomorrow. The details should have been sent to you via email. So please check them. I have another trip today, so I'll see you tomorrow. Karen seemed genuinely displeased about the trip. However, she seemed resigned to the fact that it was an order from the bosses. Wanting to avoid unnecessary communication, she walked away from me. When I returned to my desk and checked my email, I found the message about the trip. It was strange to be informed about a trip the day before, but the content made sense. This trip was a meeting with the company handling the self-generation project Karen had sternly mentioned. This company also has overseas operations, and the meeting would be held at their overseas branch in a few days. Karen might be accompanying me to keep an eye on me, but it didn't bother me. I had already conveyed everything necessary to the client, and now we just had to wait for their decision. There was no chance of the discussion going off track, and no one wanted that. So, it didn't matter to me whether Karen was there or not. As I prepared for the trip after work, I received a message on my work phone. It was from Karen. The message read, "We need to talk, so please come to the airport early tomorrow." I set my alarm an hour earlier than planned and went to bed. The next day, I headed to the lounge early, intending to wait for Karen, but she was already there waiting for me. "I'm sorry to keep you waiting." When I said that, Karen didn't react and instead instructed me to get a drink. Karen already had her drink in hand. I grabbed the same coffee and sat down with her. "You said you had something to discuss. What is it?" I assumed it was about my dinner with Michaela. And I was curious why I was being reprimanded. After defending myself against any false accusations, I planned to confront Karen about the expense report issue. However, Karen brought up an entirely different topic. "I want to ensure the success of this project. Our yearly performance is hanging by a thread, but this contract could push us forward." Her unusual openness caught me off guard, and I couldn't help but ask, "Why do you care so much about the numbers? Is chasing figures all that enjoyable?" Realizing my bluntness, I glanced at Karen to see if she was offended. "Someone like you, living carefree, wouldn't understand. Let's go." With that, Karen left the lounge and headed to the boarding gate. I was thinking we stay more at the lounge. I hurriedly downed my coffee and followed Karen. What surprised me next was the ticket Karen handed me. It was a first-class ticket. One of the perks was not having to wait in long lines, yet Karen had boarded the plane earlier than planned. "Are you planning to expense this?" When I directly questioned her as we stood side by side, her eyebrow twitched. "It doesn't affect your own money, so it doesn't matter. You'll be my slave forever. Just follow me quietly." She snapped back and started walking toward her seat. I wasn't particularly looking forward to it, but my first time in first class was overwhelming. The spacious seats offered a decent amount of privacy. I was amazed that the wealthy turned travel into an experience, but Karen was lost in thought, staring into the distance. How much time had passed? Not even an hour had passed since takeoff when a young flight attendant, looking pale, reported to a senior-looking attendant. "The Captain Alec and co-pilot Troy have collapsed." Her voice reached our ears, and the commotion quickly spread. Even Karen's face turned pale, her eyes wide open. We needed to act before the cabin descended into panic. I stood up and declared, "Leave it to me. I'll fly the plane." They probably thought I had lost my mind. Karen, who had been speechless until now, suddenly blurted out in a panic, "Don't do anything reckless. Nothing good ever comes from your actions. To calm her down, I told the flight attendant, "Please communicate our situation immediately. We need to return." Until a few years ago, I was a pilot in the US Air Force. There's probably no one else here who can land this plane safely. Despite my experience as a US Air Force pilot, I couldn't help but feel anxious. I knew that flying a fighter jet was different from piloting a commercial airplane. However, I needed everyone else to stay calm so I could focus. To reassure myself, I said, "It'll be all right," and headed for the cockpit. What happened next is a blur. I operated the controls in a daze, battling nausea from the tension while feeling the vibrations of the landing through my entire body. In reality, the autopilot did most of the work, ensuring the passenger's safety. The autopilot system calculated the optimal route, altitude, rate of climb and descent, and speed, although it was not as skilled as a top pilot. I will probably never be more grateful for the autopilot function in my life. Once we successfully landed, the tension lifted, and I found myself in a daze. Karen put her arm around my shoulder and helped me to the lounge, where I spent some time calming down. "Thank you for your help, Karen." I nodded to Karen, who brings me a drink and rubs my back until I calm down. "Don't mention it. Actually, there's someone who wants to speak with you." When Karen raised her hand, a familiar figure approached. It was the person we were scheduled to meet for the self-generation equipment project at the overseas branch. The person I had been dealing with was apparently scheduled to attend the meeting at the overseas branch. He had witnessed me heading to the cockpit from the same first-class section. He praised my courage and acknowledged my professionalism. "He has approved your contract proposal and expressed a desire for a long-term partnership," Karen said. It seemed that my approach of offering mutual benefits had earned his trust, leading to a long-term business collaboration. Hearing Karen's explanation, I felt relieved. It felt like validation that proposing mutually beneficial deals was the right approach. Since the plane had returned to the departure airport, the overseas trip was postponed, but we agreed to reschedule the meeting and sealed the deal. Karen and I found a quiet place to talk. "I must thank you properly. I'm sorry for calling you my slave and treating you harshly." "I apologize," Karen said, unusually gentle. Seeing her softer demeanor made me smile. Understanding that Karen had a good heart as a boss, I wondered why she had been so harsh. When I asked, Karen opened up about herself. "Since becoming a manager, I thought I needed to act tough to maintain authority. I guess I overcompensated for my insecurities as a female manager by being harsh," she admitted. Karen apologized again, bowing deeply. Since I wasn't deeply hurt, I reassured her with a smile, "It's okay." But then, I straightened up, recalling Michaela's concern. I realized it was the perfect moment to address it. Taking a deep breath, I cautiously brought up the topic. "Karen, I need to ask. Why did you book first-class seats? Wouldn't business class be more appropriate for a business trip?" Karen looked puzzled and replied nonchalantly, "You seem fixated on that. Think of it as an investment. There are connections and information you can only gain there." Not satisfied with her explanation, I couldn't help but raise my voice. "You can't just spend company funds on such flimsy reasons. There are people struggling because of this. Have you considered the accounting department's perspective?" Seeing the unusually passionate, Karen's eyes widened in surprise. Then, she nodded in understanding. "Michaela, maybe there's been a misunderstanding. It seems we should discuss this directly with her," Karen said. Although I didn't understand what she meant, I called Michaela as Karen suggested, and the three of us met at an bar later that day. When Michaela arrived, her usual bright expression was gone. It was understandable. The source of her troubles was sitting right in front of her, and she knew Karen was aware of the complaint. Even the most resilient person would struggle to come under such circumstances. Perhaps sensing Michaela's discomfort, Karen began explaining right away. "Michaela, I'm sorry for causing you so much trouble with my lack of communication." Karen's immediate apology took both Michaela and me by surprise. Karen explained that she never intended to claim the first-class ticket as an expense. She had given Michaela the business-class ticket receipt and planned to cover the difference herself. In fact, most of the cost for the two first-class tickets had come from Karen's own pocket. But why insist on first class so much? "I would have been fine with business or even economy class," I asked, expressing my genuine curiosity. Karen chuckled softly and continued. In places like that, you can make connections that are crucial for business. Today, for example, our client was seated in first class. That was true. Karen often expanded her business network in such ways. Hence her use of the term investment and her willingness to spend her own money. As a woman, I always felt the pressure to deliver more results than anyone else. But through this experience, I realized the importance of solid communication within the company. I'm really sorry, she admitted. Karen had likely faced significant challenges as a woman in a managerial role, driving her to be tough on herself and her subordinates. Seeing Michaela's relieved expression, it was clear that a burden had been lifted from her shoulders. My impression of Karen changed drastically in one day. Later, we received confirmation of the self-generation project, securing a larger and longer-term deal than initially expected. Hearing this brought me a new kind of joy. Previously, I had approached sales with the intention of making mutually beneficial proposals, not out of a desire to contribute to the company or achieve great sales figures. But now, I felt a sense of fulfillment from contributing to the company. Perhaps Karen's passion for her work had influenced me. Moving forward, I intended to continue valuing relationships with clients while also contributing to the company. A few years later, there were changes in my personal life as well. Are you really sure about this old guy? On our way back from our usual bar, I found myself facing Michaela in a park. Michaela had confessed her feelings for me. Noticing her drinking non-alcoholic beer, I had asked, perhaps you are not feeling well? With an unusually serious expression, she had replied, I don't want to get drunk today. To match her, I also refrained from drinking and enjoyed the meal. However, on the way back, she said, I need to talk to you, and called me to the park, where she confessed her feelings. I've never thought of you as an old guy. I've always seen you as someone reliable and someone I love. Hearing Michaela's honest feelings, I finally admitted the excitement I felt whenever I saw her. I had been waiting eagerly for our meetings, though I had tried to ignore my feelings, hiding behind the excuse of our age difference. Life isn't so bad after all, I thought, as I took Michaela's hand and walked towards the park exit.